We're going to talk now to Mr. Loophole, who is, of course, our favourite lawyer. He's a man called Nick Freeman, who has got lots of things to say, no doubt, about the North. Because, I mean, I think I'm right in saying, Nick, I know that you spend some time in France, but you also spend some time here. And you are up to North, aren't you, a little bit?
I'm sorry I'm not in today, but I'm in solidarity with Burnham, and I've decided to stay up North. Is that all right?
I mean, it's pathetic, isn't it? You know, because this whole. I mean, I'm calling him a sort of parody Northerner because he's doing this thing where he's like, "I'm really friendly, me," you know, because I'm not like them people down in London where they're all rude and terrible and everything's really expensive. And you come north, it'd be lovely. And it's like, shut up! You're talking absolute cobblers, mate.
It's a substitute for a lack of ideas.
Yeah.
At the moment, talking to two groups, one on the left of the party and one on the right or central of the party. He doesn't even know which way he's going to go, and that's his problem. And he's trying to work out: am I going to go with Rayner and Miliband, or am I going to go more streeting and keep it a bit more sensible and actually try and keep in line with what I've always said was that our best hope as a country for Labour was Starmer and Reeves. And I know that sounds absolutely, but I maintain they are the best for the country, and Labour will really rue the day that they've got rid of Starmer. You know, he did have a...
Yeah, I mean, you may be right that things will get worse, and I think they probably will. But I mean, Starmer had to go, surely. I mean, the problem with Starmer was that he couldn't do any of the things that he said he was going to do. The things he said he wasn't going to do, he ended up doing, and he just was sort of revealed to be a man who couldn't keep his word in the end, wasn't he?
I agree with everything you've said, but notwithstanding that, I bet you, if we're having a conversation, you'll say, I wish we had Starmer and Reeves there. Because this guy is going to, certainly if he goes with, can you imagine Miliband as Chancellor of the Exchequer? You know, that will be the Liz Truss moment, and that really will be the end financially, economically for this country. And it will then take us years and years and years to recover. The years is, one, he hasn't got any policies at the moment. He doesn't know which way he's going to go. And secondly, when he decides what his policies are, what actually he believes in, he needs to work out with his team how he's going to achieve that and then win the next election. And both those things are completely impossible, and it's just not going to happen. So he sounds okay, looks okay, is from up north, and that's got a warmth and an appeal to it, you know, a nice cuddly man. But he will be outed very soon, because the moment he's exposed to questions, the moment he's being cross-examined about what his policies are and how he's going to achieve it, and facts are going to be pointed out to him, he's going to then be exposed for who he really is, which is basically a vacuum who just all he wants. It's a little bit like Victoria Beckham. She wanted to be the most famous woman in the world, and she's not far off it. Good luck to her. But at least she had some talent. She had something about her. Burnham's got nothing other than the fact up north. I mean, can you imagine being beaten in a leadership challenge by Corbyn and by Miliband, and now you are leader with he will be leader. I just hope Al Cairns does challenge him, so at least he can be questioned about his policies. But how can we have such a political failure trying to... What is anyone thinking about when you have someone who's never had a job? He's a total failure in politics. He's been in politics most of his life. How is he on earth, when he won't even tell us what he believes in, other than I'm going to duplicate all the current layers of bureaucracy and I'm going to move it up north? You know, how's that going to achieve anything? It's nothing. It's meaningless nonsense.
It is. But doesn't it bother you, Nick, as a lawyer, at least, and not necessarily a constitutional one, but to have this kind of power grab, which seems to have been so easy for him to do, without any sort of policy document, without any kind of voting procedure, really? Yes, he won the by-election and he became an MP, but the idea for me that he's become the leader, or will become the leader of Great Britain, without as much as a sort of a by your leave, I just find quite distasteful, really.
Well, it's not democratic. I think it's a litmus test for how broken the politics is in this country, not just with the politicians, but the actual system. I mean, you just need to look at question time, don't you? And you need to look at when certainly Starmer was asked questions, particularly in relation to Mandelson, how he ducked and dived, and there are no consequences. And my view is, you know, question time, and I know we're just diverting a little bit, but Question time, the speaker should be like a judge in the High Court. Mr. Starmer, you've been asked a question, answer it. You know, one or two, right, sorry, take him down for contempt. We need accountability and responsibility. Politics should not be a game. And what we have now is career politicians with their noses in the trough, just trying to look after their own interests, devoid of any actual practical acumen, any business acumen. You know, it can't happen, it can't work. So I think the law needs to be changed, and we need to have businessmen as Farage advocates, who you pay them £1 million a year to run. I mean, James Murray, he's running the National Health. I'm sure he's a very nice, intelligent man. It's the third largest institution in the world. I don't believe he's ever had a proper job or run his own business. What chance has that man got? And he's only going to have it for a short time. It just doesn't work. So we need to bring in experts, you know, lawyers to run the Justice Department, lawyers to run the court, doctors who understand how the medical system works. We need experts, pay them properly, and at least then we have people in power who actually understand the system, rather than just playing at politics with people who are absolutely clueless and
Yeah.
just throw billions of pounds away all the time.
It's a problem, isn't it? I mean, we talk about the justice system all the time. And I mean, this week we learned that the government's going to let out more prisoners from prison over the course of the next year. Quite dangerous criminals, because there's basically no room to put anybody else in the prisons. We've also got, I think, 20,000 foreign criminals who've been released from prison, who should have been deported, who are now not going to be deported because they've managed to convince the government that they didn't know they were coming here. We've got the new Sentencing Act coming in, which is likely to make things even worse. What's going on?
Well, it's literally, instead of, we used to have a mantra, let's lock them up. Do you remember the short, sharp shock? Let's give people a lesson they'll remember, and that will act as a deterrent. We now have this, so for a sentence, a prison sentence, if you got a 12-month sentence, it was immediate, unless there were exceptional circumstances. You now have this bizarre situation where to get 12 months, you've got to do something pretty serious, but it will automatically be suspended unless there are exceptional circumstances for it not being suspended. So what does that mean? It means basically, provided you don't breach that suspension, nothing happens to you, no punishment. It's a complete let-off. We're now increasing the suspended sentence to 3 years. So sentences can now be extended to 3 years and it be suspended. So you imagine doing something that warrants a 3-year sentence, and we're actually going to suspend it, so nothing will happen to you. And as long as you're a good person for 3 years, you're fine, you're okay. So what we're trying to do is let's empty the prisons. And the policy behind it, I understand, is we're short on money, we're short of prison places, and we need to lock up the most violent and deadly criminals. That's fine, but we're letting out people who fall into that category. We're also allowing the new system will allow judges to defer sentence, so for 12 months instead of 6. And to give you an idea of the way the sentencing structure is being cannibalized, if you were currently receiving a sentence of a prison of, say, 3 years, that sentence you would do, say, 50% of it. You're now going to do a third. If you were going to receive a sentence where you would be released or eligible for parole after 2/3, it's now reduced to 50%. So the whole thing is thousands and thousands of people will be released. It's going to operate retrospectively. So although it comes in September, it will operate retrospectively. So it will count to people serving sentences now. And we're basically just going to empty our prisons and save them. Arguably, it's a new thought policy, biggest change for many, many years. Just lock up the most dangerous and threatening criminals, and let's deal with other criminals in a more holistic way. Let's give them community penalties, etc., etc. And time again, that's been shown not to work. But we're in a situation where we don't have the places. So we don't
not just build, I mean, I know it sounds ridiculously obvious, but why can we not just build more prisons, for heaven's sake?
Yeah, well, yeah, I love, and your listeners may hate what I'm about to say, but you probably remember the pictures of that prison in South America where people are literally chained up, heavily tattooed. And you think, well, I wouldn't want to spend my day like that. And if our prisons, if we had 2 or 3 prisons like that for the most dangerous criminals, I think it would operate very quickly. First of all, as a deterrent. And I think once in there, they'd never want to come back. And then you can use the rest of prison because there are a lot of fraudsters around. There's a lot of scammers. We don't want to live in a society which is rich with crime. And what we're seeing now is the motorists who are criminalised, and they're punished more than the actual criminals. And to me, that's just bizarre, because most motorists are actually sensible, reasonable people who make by and large, minor transgressions. But we're criminalising the road traffic movement, and we're decriminalising offences like shoplifting, minor assault, sexual offences. It's just, you can't believe it. You know, if you spoke to your parents or my parents about it and said, this is what's happening, they say, no, you're teasing me. This is a joke. What date is it today? It just doesn't make sense. And that's the problem. Nothing that happens now makes sense.
It doesn't, because I mean, I've had these conversations this week because of facial recognition cameras that are being introduced into cities. The ANPR cameras that record you speeding, doing 23 in a 20, or 43 in a 40, or whatever it is. They tend to catch the law-abiding people of the country. They don't catch the criminals, because the criminals don't care. If you're driving an illegal car that you've either stolen or is uninsured, and if you get a ticket, you're not going to pay it. Whereas if I get one, I have to pay it. And the same goes for facial recognition. If I'm wearing a balaclava, or, I'm wearing a crash helmet, or I'm wearing a burqa and I'm walking down the street committing some kind of crime, they're not going to get me. But if I'm not doing that, then they are going to get me.
And look, one in 15 drivers have Joey number plates. These are number plates that cannot be picked up by the cameras. So the criminals who are driving these cars, or the people who just are, persistent speeders, drive dangerously, there's you see them on the roads, a massive number of people who drive these cars with the numbers on. And I would encourage your listeners to get their passenger to take a picture of the number plate and report it to the authorities, because potentially they're trying to pervert the course of justice. That's at the very minimum, the very least. And far more likely, they're probably carrying stolen items. They might be carrying guns. They're up to no good. Why would they try and conceal their identity? And of course, because we have no police on our roads, they're largely untouchable. And so you're absolutely right, Mike. It's the people like you and I, who we like to think ourselves as law-abiding citizens, like most of your listeners, who we stump up, we're easy prey, it's fiscally inspired, and we're the ones propping the economy up.
Yeah, I know. Shocking. Now, I don't know whether you know about the Pooch situation. I'm about to ask you about something that happened to him with regard to driving, right? And if you haven't heard, this is one of the most terrifying stories you will ever hear. When we started this business, we've got a place in London. He lives in Surrey, and so he decided to drive in every day. But he drove in his daughter was working in Australia, right? So he used her old car, which was not compliant for ULEZ, right? So he decided to sign up to the auto pay system on ULEZ, right? So he came in literally for about 2 months or something like that, and thought that every time he drove into London, he was paying automatically the ULEZ, because it was, supposedly an auto pay system. It turns out that his daughter, they moved house, right? His daughter did not re-register her car at the new house. It turned out that he wasn't actually automatically paying, because there are two auto pay systems. One is an auto pay which you automatically pay every time you cross the line. The second one is what they call auto pay manual, which is what he had inadvertently signed up to, which means that you actually have to sign in every time you use it, right? So he's got about 40 fines, which all went to the old address, which he didn't see. So he's now got 40 fines of something like £220 each. So he's now got a bill of something like 12 grand to pay to TfL, because of the fact that all of those things went wrong. Now, I don't know what you do about that. I mean, he says he's going to fight it. What can you do?
I'm afraid I don't think it's good news for him. Obviously, it's his failing and his daughter's failing, and the responsibility lies with the driver to make sure, first of all, the car's registered at the address that you live, and secondly, if you're going through a congestion zone or something like that, it's your responsibility to pay. If there was a fault with the system and not through his own making, then absolutely he's got a cause of action. But from what you've told me, I'm afraid, because the alternative is to say, well, look, we're going to allow you to have come in free on those days. Look, it might be worth an email, it might be worth a telephone call saying, look, if I pay all the congestion charges, would you please exercise your discretion because this is what's happened? But, knowing TfL as I do, I think it's very likely that I'm
Yeah.
afraid
I mean, I had
so.
a similar situation, but to a much lesser extent when I changed cars, right? And I was signed into TfL, but obviously I changed cars at a different registration. And because you sometimes forget to pay it, I got about 3 or 4 fines. And I went back to them and I said, look, I'm really sorry. I've forgotten I couldn't remember what my passwords were. And I said, I can't get in to change it. And they were actually quite good. And they said, I'll tell you what, just pay us the congestion charge and we'll drop the fine. So, but I mean, that was for maybe 100 quid as opposed to 12 grand.
Yeah, Pooch's is on an industrial scale, I'm afraid. And also, he should have been aware that money was not being deducted from his account. I mean,
I suppose.
Over a 2-month period, he's thinking, oh, Christ, this money's not going out. And he should think, and I'm sure he would, what's going on? There must be a mistake somewhere. So I'm afraid the driver's got to be proactive. It's worth a conversation. It's worth an email. It's worth getting down on your hands and knees and begging and saying, I'm so sorry. But I'm not hopeful. But, if you don't ask, you don't get. So that would be my advice.
For them to give them the car or something. You take the car, for God's sake.
Certainly reduce.
Good to talk. Thanks very much indeed. Nick Freeman there, who is, of course... But there's apparently no loophole. Have you heard that story about... I mean...